Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is doing alright. Let me check my volume before I get started. Just as a heads up, I'm sorry, I'm bad at doing two things at once. Alright, levels is fine. Just as a heads up, I've been saying this for pretty much every video because I feel I need to explain why there's that atrocious banner at the bottom. Super Chat will be off for like a month. I think it's censorship. Whatever. I'm not going to go into it. I'm just sick of going into it. But for those of you who want to donate or feel the need to donate, if Super Chat's not available, you can use the link below. That is not a push. That is just a heads up. I'll also feel the need to say that. But this kind of goes into the conversation about censorship. I'm on Twitter, and there's been another YouTuber, a large YouTuber, or essentially a presence. I don't mean his physical weight, but a big name YouTuber that's also been suspended off of YouTube. Off of Twitter, vanished, erased, as if he never existed. I am bothered by this behavior, this silencing of people for things that they're doing. And in this case, he was being sarcastic. Anybody who's looking at it can understand that he's being sarcastic, and it doesn't matter. Still, gone, erased. Dustbin of history. You no longer exist from the standpoint of the digital footprint. TJ, the amazing atheist, has had his Twitter account suspended. Suspended in the same way that Van Buren has had his account suspended, as in erased. Like Stalin erasing Trotsky out of a photograph. I find this to be worrying. This really does put me in the mind of this kind of old Soviet stuff that was taking place when the Bolsheviks took power in 22. I subscribe to the idea, maybe idealistically fair enough, that free speech is precisely for the speech you don't like. That the whole reason, the premise behind this idea that people can say what they want is because there are times where you need people to say certain things that the crowd, that the public, that people around you may not necessarily want to hear, but for various reasons of being a patriot, being a damn good human being, you need to say those things. And people need to some degree be protected in the way those things are being said. We are in a different climate, meaning our society has changed technologically, and we're still holding on to certain vestiges as if the past is somehow the still thing that's playing forth. Meaning we need to revamp how we talk about the First Amendment. And part of revamping it is to realize that most of the public discourse and most of the news that people consume take place on private platforms. I find that to be extremely important. If those things are taking place on private platforms, just from an outcome standpoint, do you really want the top 1% to have complete control over the reality that people encounter? Meaning, if most people are at a choke point from the standpoint of the internet, and if these sites, Facebook, Twitter, Google, have become a fulcrum where 70% of the population gets their news from these sites, does the population want protections to make sure that the news and the information that they're getting, essentially a fairness doctrine, Reagan got rid of it, but that if you're going to put out a site like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, that there are certain protections for people who are on those sites, whether businesses, like channels like myself, have protected speech. This idea that Facebook, Twitter, Google, they're not neutral platforms. The idea that they could be allowed to use the terms of use to constrain the range of debate is problematic to me. And it should be problematic to the people in the society, whether you're a right-winger or whether you're on the left. This pressure to essentially constrain the level of speech and to tamp down, let's say, divisive speech. Because the political class doesn't necessarily want to deal with a populist revolt, and they want that information to come back in line to what would take place as will typically be seen as mainstream. If the political edifice is going to press down on a private edifice to shut down the level of speech, then we as a citizen body needs to start thinking about one or two things. Nationalizing Google, which I think is insane. Insane from the standpoint that I doubt it's going to happen. Or strengthening First Amendment speech. If you have companies that literally depend on speech for their very existence, there is no Facebook if nobody posts anything. There is no YouTube if no one posts anything. There is no Google if people are not putting things on the internet for Google to search. I am saying that the algorithms that they use, the people who they platform, as long as they're not going past certain democratically chosen volumes or democratically chosen, let's say, parameters. Meaning, no, you can't yell fire, and fair enough if you're going to deplatform somebody for yelling fire. And yeah, fair enough if you're going to deplatform somebody for talking about violence to someone else. Not in a bullshit way, but violence to somebody else. Fair enough. But there should be protections that go beyond just the terms of use for the companies themselves. This idea that you can deplatform a Palestinian or somebody who's pushing Palestinian rights or get rid of certain pages that are pushing for Palestinians is problematic. It's completely problematic. And it's grossly unfair from the standpoint of people who are trying to get a fair shake at speech. Making this argument that you can always go to another platform. Yeah, you can always go to another platform and scream in the wilderness. I'm talking about the reality here that private enterprise is where we're having our public discourse. And we need to adjust how we see it and update how we see it to something that is more, that makes more sense for the 21st century. Times change. Modes of communication change. We need to go along with changing how we, let's say, see those modes of communication and in companies that deal with these. I've used this argument before because I think the argument fits. The moment that you say that a company doesn't have complete control over everything that takes place within its bounds, then you've already set the precedent to say, if you're going to have a site that deals with this idea of speech, you can't be unfair. There are certain boundaries where that speech can be constrained as, or that speech is protected as. Let's say it that way. This doesn't apply if you're in an office building. So understand what I'm saying. It is constrained to people who are doing things or on channels that are specifically used for speech. Twitter got rid of him for a joke. Literally got rid of him for a joke. I'm showing you the joke. I'm going to show you his appeal. I'm going to show you his response. So this is right here. The Amazing Atheist was talking about, what's the woman's name? Michelle Kyung or whatever her name is. There was a big story that came up about something where the woman was responding to somebody else. She was being pretty belligerent, to put it mildly. And people were saying, how on earth is this woman able to stay on Twitter but the other people are not? So he's doing a play off of this, essentially satire. TJ's Twitter account was suspended for this tweet. This is clearly satire, not him expressing this is a genuine opinion. So he says, white people are a disease, they are AIDS, they are pox upon the earth, and everything stinking cracker, one of them shit. Wait. White people are a disease, they are AIDS, they are pox upon the earth, and every stinking cracker, one of them, should die of every disease at once. He said every white person should die of every disease at once. You know how many diseases there are? So, New York Times, how about a lucrative job at your paper? I think I've demonstrated the qualifications. Clearly, that's a joke. Essentially, the woman worked at the New York Times who was saying this stuff, and he's making the point that, hey, I'm being extremely belligerent. Can I get a job at your paper? Is this the qualification that you need to get a job at the New York Times? It's a joke. Anyone who's looking at that can see it's a joke. Even if you say it's not a good joke, it's still a joke. when Sam Cedar went through this, and MSNBC was trying to fire Sam Cedar for this, I said the same thing. It was a fucking joke. You can see the context of it. Sam Cedar, yeah, he's in my sandbox, even though I joked the shit out of Sam Cedar because we have different ideas on how you get from point A to point B. By the same token, you can't fire the guy for a goddamn joke, even if the joke was somewhat risque, to put it mildly. He was making a rape joke about his daughter. So TJ appeals this, and he says, I do not feel that I violated the rules. Right here. Thank you for your reply. I do not feel that I violated the rules against promoting violence or directly attacking someone on the basis of race. My comments about white people, of which I am one, were completely facetious and meant to satirize the well-publicized Sarah Jeong, that's her name, Sarah Jeong, tweets that made international headlines. At this point, I think that my 9-year-old account with 108,000 followers is being terminated under false pretenses. You cannot possibly believe that the reasons you have provided. The sarcasm of the tweet is completely obvious. I ask you once again to please restore my account. Faceless, nameless, unaccountable corporations being the controller of all things speech. Is this really what you want your world to be? I ask you again. For all those Democrats who think this is perfectly okay because they're getting rid of Alex Jones, all of a sudden becoming free marketeers, and then you have Republicans feeling that the sites are unfairly hitting them, so all of a sudden now they want legislation for it. I've been pretty consistent from the standpoint of speech. If you don't like something he said, block him. Why do you have to delete his account, especially for something this absurd? Let's keep going. A 9-year account. How do you erase somebody in this way? And why would you, the public, want them to have this unaccountable power to make this particular discretion to erase somebody in this way? Why wouldn't you want basic protections for the people who are going online, whether it's for your speech or somebody else's speech? Why would you want a platform that controls 70% of the speech, meaning the platforms together, to have the sole discretion in what's considered to be appropriate and okay speech, or for that matter, appropriate and okay media that the public can consume? Why? Why? Their response to this being completely unaccountable corporation. Hello, your account has been suspended and will not be restored because it was found to be violating Twitter's terms of service, specifically the Twitter rules against hateful conduct. It is against our rules to promote violence against or directly attack or threaten other people on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious affiliation, age, disability, or disease. That's a canned statement. That's the only statement he is ever going to get from this. From my own experiences. Anything else that's subsequent to this is just going to be a repeating of this. Doesn't matter what he says. It's unaccountable. There's no democratic process of this. There's no union in this. And I know this is Twitter, so it's different than YouTube, but I'm still making the point that these companies that have so much power over speech are the sole thing to make the determination of whether somebody is going to be deleted from entirety. Twitter at this point has gone beyond this thing of just a platform. Twitter in this is almost a news agency. It refers information from people, all sorts of people, across the political spectrum, public and, regular human beings, where they have a history and a timeline that goes back years, and within a whim, gone. Some of these things are for research purposes. Some of these things people just use to keep an account from where they are. And in one inglorious, ignoble moment, Twitter can delete it. Why do you think that's okay? And why do you want all of this public speech to be purely held in unaccountable hands? I'm bothered by this. I really am. Right here. Here's another part. Additionally, if we determine that the primary purpose of an account is to incite harm towards others on the basis of category, that account may be suspended without prior warning. You can learn more about our policy against hateful conduct here. I guess this was his response. In a nutshell, his account has been suspended. TJ, the amazing atheist, is no more on Twitter. Alright, I'll leave it at that. This one wasn't meant to be long, but this is extraordinarily aggravating that this is taking place. And by the way, this is censorship. I understand some people are like, they're private companies, they can do whatever they want to do. If that's true, then they can constrain speech to be purely mainstream media. You say anything about the Russia stuff, not hacking the elections, gone. Terms of service. You violated our terms of service by publishing fake news in order to entice human beings. Mind you, these rules are subjective. They can apply them any way they want to. They're a private corporation. How far do you want to protect this idea of these guys being private corporations? Do you believe that private corporations can do any and everything they want to do within their bounds of their business? The answer is no. No lefty will say yes to that question. If that answer is no, then we're talking about ranges. You have a corporation that is purely dependent upon user input in order to operate itself. Public interest. They have magnificent powers in shaping the reality of the people who are looking at them, 70% of which who at this point get their news from them. Why? I don't understand this idea that you wouldn't necessarily want protections to keep the information or the ability for those people to access that information. Fair. What was all the fight over net neutrality? This idea of we don't want ISPs to be able to control the information stream to one site over the next. But you're okay with Facebook, Twitter, and Google controlling the information stream from the standpoint of the news and the information and how that information is partitioned out. Black Agenda Report, World Socialist website, Truthdig. Those sites are being throttled is the wrong word, but those sites have lost traffic based on the way that they're accounting this kind of news algorithms. This is happening. This is happening to the left. If Google, meaning private enterprise, is going to be the vehicle to which we now get our news and our information, shouldn't there be fairness within that process? Wouldn't you want speech to some degree to be, I guess my point is, strengthening and extending the First Amendment to deal with areas in which people have public discourse. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying fire in the theater and all this other stuff. But I am saying that if public discourse has changed, has fundamentally changed, what we use in order to communicate with one another has fundamentally changed. Our society is changed in this regard. It's different. We need to consider and account for that. Part of accounting for that is strengthening the First Amendment. That's my thought anyway. All right. It messed up. They leave Alex Jones up. Yeah, I know. Brian Cosby. That is funny, right? They leave Alex Jones up on Twitter. That's the one place where Alex Jones stayed, and yet they get rid of TJ the Amazing Atheist for a goddamn joke. It's fucking arbitrary. It's absolutely arbitrary. I hate this. This is literally censorship. If you don't like what he said there, just block him. Just block him. I don't like that. I don't like that. I'm blocking you, buddy. Now, I've just blocked you. Yeah, do that. Do that. Why do you have to literally take down everything that he's ever done? I can even say giving him a warning. And I say a warning, even though I know the warning is bullshit because he hasn't done anything wrong. We've allowed private enterprise to co-opt the areas to which we debate. That's what we've allowed to take place. And they're creating the terms of use, constraining the level of dialogue with, to some degree, the backing and the pushing of Democratic and Republican Party and other governments around the world, specifically the Israeli government. That's what we have for political discourse. And you hear some lefties talking about, it's a private enterprise. They can do whatever they want. Yeah. Is that really the argument you want to make? Is it really the argument as a lefty you want to make? Hey, it's private enterprise. Businesses can do whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. They're businesses. They can do whatever they want. Yeah, I don't believe that. I don't believe businesses can do whatever they want. We can make democratic decisions to say that our speech, to some degree, is going to be protected on areas in which, if the new form for dialogue is going to be private enterprise, meaning these type of sites, then it is grossly unfair where one side gets to some degree penalized from the standpoint of speech and the other side doesn't. Now mind you, it depends on what they're doing and what they're saying. But BDS movement is on the left. It's decidedly on the left. I don't know where the Amazing Atheist is, but that quote that he put, that was nonsense. Imagine a situation where you have First Amendment right legislation that is decided upon that says, look, you can't get rid of somebody for something to that effect. This doesn't mean that you keep Alex Jones. What you decide upon as a democratic decision for strengthening of the First Amendment rights on sites that primarily use content from people in the way that we essentially engage in Facebook, Twitter, etc., or even from the standpoint of the way news is accrued on these sites, from the standpoint of algorithm. Look, I guess my main point is this. We're in a new climate from the standpoint of the way we consume information. Congress is putting pressure on sites in order to get them to not just be platforms, to be active participants in the way that the information is accrued to the users. Congress is doing an end run around the First Amendment. They're doing this because they don't want to deal with populist revolts in the country itself. They have vested interests to do this. They want to protect their jobs. The country itself wants something else. Now, if you're getting to the point where the areas in which people could speak and could have language, YouTube, Facebook, when you get to the point where you're constraining language in those areas, where you're trying to constrain the conversation and the level of dialogue, I think that's censorship. Now, the thing is, I guess you could say they don't have to be fair in the way that they constrain information. Well, do companies have to be fair in the people who they decide to serve when coming into a restaurant? Why do we have these laws that says that you can't discriminate against somebody for the basis of color, sexuality, and everything else? Because we're looking for a certain level of fairness in the way people engage in the society itself. We used to have a fairness doctrine from the standpoint of media. Platforms in areas in which depend on dialogue, yeah, I think people should have a certain amount of speech that's protected on those platforms, seeing as those platforms are primarily speech platforms. Yeah, I do. We need to strengthen the First Amendment. We have a new climate of speech, it's particularly from the standpoint of the electronic and digital space. I don't think it's insane to say we need to advance. But yeah, it is fucked up that they got rid of TJ. It is profoundly fucked up. McPherson argument reminded me of how addicts can harm themselves to the point of dying if they abruptly stop drug use. That's kind of what he's saying with Yeah, right? I had never heard that. The weird part about it is I've seen documentaries on global dimming, but global dimming by itself, like nothing else. It was completely disconnected from anything else. And I remember in the documentary or in that thing, they were talking about this idea of it should be hotter. But this wasn't connected to climate and coal or anything else. This was connected to something else. I think it was another hypothesis, but it was making the point that we are experiencing global dimming. Now, I thought, that's interesting. I don't know how that applies. He comes and says, look, the global dimming is being caused by the sulfates. The sulfates are being pumped into the sky in addition to the coal and everything else from oil production. And if you stop, the sulfates will leave, which means the global dimming would essentially start to disperse, in which case you're going to get hit with an abrupt temperature increase. That's completely disconnected from the 10 years that's built into the calculation just from the excess carbon that is already, gonna come about, or the heating that's from the excess carbon that's already in the atmosphere. So it's like, That's a terrifying synopsis. If you stop now, if you get a green energy new deal, temperature is going to spike by a degree, by like 1.5 degrees or something like that within a short period of time. After which you have another 10 years of increases in temperature. He's like, what? It's like, what? Did you hear him? He said like he went off the grid, and to some degree he started to realize. I guess he realized like, what's the point? Or at the very least he realized this is difficult to do. And it is difficult to do. It makes it extremely difficult to do. If you're a person, of course you're going to want comfortable things. It is, look, the ham that you get from a deli tastes better, like Private Select and Boar's Head, than the ham from Whole Foods. That's small. That's almost insignificant. I'm just trying to make the point that the stuff that's not necessarily great for the environment at all, it's the stuff that's the most polished. Going to like these other stores is like a secondary action. You're almost penalizing yourself at getting things that are better for the environment and better for, you could say, even you. He goes off the grid and he's like, damn, I missed the cash. I missed the comforts. I missed the niceties. I miss those things. I'm a human being. I like to have, comfort in this way. So yeah, I like mani-pedis. I like massages. I like chiropractic adjustments. Like, those are things that are... Of course you're going to like those things as human beings. It's absolutely rational to like those things as human beings. I guess the catch becomes, from the larger perspective, fucking killing yourselves. And then there's a secondary question of, even if McPherson is wrong, you still have a secondary problem. The public itself is not geared in any way to stop any of this stuff. Like, it's not a situation where the public is like, oh God, we have a problem. The public is grinding how it goes about its way to a halt. It's not doing that at all. The public is not, it's not changing. People are still getting their hamburgers. People are still, going from point A to point B. This idea of electric cars is not necessarily pushed, full scale. They're not doing green energy panels and all this other stuff. So even if McPherson is wrong, just based on regular climate science, we're fucking going off a cliff. Going off a cliff. Catalyst. The Civil War is their goal, in my opinion, because it's good distraction for their power shift or the culprits to run away. Jamarl Thomas, this might sound ludicrous, but even Richard Nixon would be on the side of free speech. Yeah. The progressives on this issue, Republicans used to have some of the same principles. I don't understand. I don't understand lefties on this. Like, they threw communists in prison. Not just in prison. This idea of the witch hunts that was taking place, not to mention the context of all of this, is this Russian nonsense. The woman lost the reality show host. And instead of dealing with the fact that she lost the reality show host, they're bringing all of this shit up and putting pressure and censorship on all of these groups. They got rid of Alex Jones, literally blacklisted him. Yes, he's still online. But for all intents and purposes, the way he goes about distributing and allowing people to see that stuff on the various channels, up in smoke, with the exception of Twitter. That can happen to anybody. And the argument that, well, it's their sites, that means that can happen to anybody. And it can be at the sole discretion of the company itself. Just saying. That's terrifying. Jamal defending communism again. No, I'm making a point that the people who were arrested that were communists, they were just communists. Like, it wasn't a situation where they were doing something. They weren't actively doing anything. It was who they were. The same thing with socialists, during the other era. It was just who they were. Those witch hunts were based on who they were. It wasn't necessarily something they were actively doing. There's a difference in those things. I'm just saying, is this really what you want? Is this really what you want? Alex Jones burned allies in the left. Look, this is not about Alex Jones to me. Believe it or not. Alex Jones is the lightning rod. What I want out of this is protections or an extension to the First Amendment. That's all. It's like an extra clause protecting people. As I do this job, if I say something that in one of the terms of use it doesn't like, say something that's not racist, sexist, doesn't hurt anybody, they can still contort the terms of use to get rid of certain people like me. This is selfish to some degree. I want this section to be protected. We have no union. We have nothing from a collectivization standpoint in order to push back on any kind of change in the algorithm or change in the way that they go about their terms of use. Nothing. And these lefties are out there fighting for the 1% and fighting for corporate power over them just because it allows it to attack Alex Jones. I think this is utter folly. This is absolutely utter folly. Yeah, it's a fucking joke. That's right. That said, however, I don't like the mechanism by which he was removed. I don't like the mechanism by which he was removed because there is no mechanism. They make this shit up as they go. It's their company. This is kind of my point. There's no union. There's nothing. There's no aggregation pushing back against this at all. This is a 1% that's full control over speech. Why do you want that? This is an arbitrary thing in which they got rid of him. But people will say this is their company and they can get rid of whoever they want to get rid of. I'm asking, why do you want that? X Factor, YouTube is big enough that it has become another version of television. Yes, First Amendment should apply. Agreed. There should be regulations to take away power from social media's ruin people's lives. Yes. Think about that. You can literally make the point of saying, we're changing the algorithm tomorrow. In which case, all of these people no longer can pay you, ruin those lives. When they change the algorithm and gut secular talk, I think they gut him by like 90%. They did the show on whim. They gave two shits about how it was going to adversely impact the people that own that channel because they were like, we're big enough to what are they going to do? Go somewhere else? Yeah, there should be protections for the way people go about giving their speech, providing it is not breaking certain guidelines. And guidelines not created by a goddamn corporation. Yeah, it should be. It's fucking amazing. All right. I'm going to end this. And yeah, I've demonetized now. As you can see, you can't give super chats. My entire channel is demonetized. They made a choice. Didn't necessarily want to even be explicit and to explain why they made that particular choice. They just said you were duplicating videos. Okay, show me the video. I don't have a copyright strike. How are you saying I'm duplicating the video when I don't have a copyright strike? Yeah, it's arbitrary. They make those decisions, they make those rules, and there should be protections for the people who are online. If we don't have a union, okay, people don't want to do that. But at the very least, why on earth would you want some level of protection for what you do as a career and job? This is not about Alex Jones. This is not about Alex Jones. Yes, Alex Jones is a lightning rod for this, but I'm using Alex Jones as a lightning rod because I want to get across this thing of you also are vulnerable. You are also vulnerable. Your job, what you do on YouTube, you are vulnerable to the whims of a multinational corporation. Why do you want that to be so? Why do you want that to be so? Yeah, there should be an adjustment to the First Amendment to extend to companies that are engaged in speech. That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Creators need to form their own open platforms. Yeah, but 70% of the news takes place between these social media platforms. How do you do that? Like, how do you, at that point, form something new when the overwhelming majority of people have aggregated around the other social media sites? Like, I'm making a point that this idea of, hey, you should go do something else, it becomes somewhat folly. It becomes somewhat folly. It's taking on a life of its own. TYT offers a protection racket for their affiliates that grants them some level of immunity from this shit. Jones derangement syndrome. Oh, that's a good point. How does Donald Trump threaten people in the way that he threatens people and not get his Twitter account taken from him? He threatened the leader of Iran. How does that not get his Twitter account taken? All right. I'm going to end this. Jamarl is an abused spouse. He would never leave YouTube. I'm an abused spouse, but I talk up about it, man. They may hit me in the eye, but I keep spitting off. I think Jamarl should have to wear an ankle monitor. What? 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 I have no idea what that means. I have no idea what that means. I know I banned Common Dreams, Truth Out, Truth Dig. When Hillary trolls descended, you couldn't have discussion there anymore. Well, it's not just you at this point. The traffic has been diverted away from those sites. Jamarl just opened Streamlabs. It's open. It's open. Streamlabs is open. Yeah, Streamlabs is open. If you have press credentials, then the First Amendment can't call for violence. Yeah, I don't think you should call for violence. I'm game, by the way. Oh, good, Winky. Good. If Trump starts a war with a tweet, would that violate Twitter guidelines? I have no idea. I have no idea. Zero idea. Look, it's arbitrary. That's the point I try to make. It's utterly arbitrary. 1 second, I'm looking for something. There we go. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't like this censorship stuff. I don't like this idea of shutting people up. Thank you. If it's 70 million accounts in 2 months. Twitter suspended 70 million accounts in 2 months. Thing is, though, he's had that account for 9 years? Jesus Christ. Think of all the tweets, think of all the retweets, think of everything that he's said over the course of that time. Gone up in smoke. Unappealable. Who can you appeal it to? Nobody. Does he have any rights about it? None. He signed essentially a contract. This is similar to people who sign contracts when they get a job. Now, they sign this contract, they get a job, arbitration. You're forced into arbitration. No, you can't have a union because you signed a contract that says you're into arbitration. Is this really what we want our lives to be like? Is this really what we want our lives to be like? I firmly support totalitarianism. That's what it sounds like, right? Love Star Trek. Yeah, I know, right? I like it. I like it too. My wife and I were gonna just binge watch it. She's I don't think she's a Trekkie per se, but I think she likes it. The person with the anti-war, Peter Van Buren, was suspended also with Vips is fighting it. Yeah. How do you fight that? How do you fight it? How do you fight it? It's a 1% company. How do you fight it? Yeah, actually, I'm definitely leaving. I want to limit the spying they do on me, and there isn't much I already don't know anymore. I am binge watching Better Call Saul. Alexander M. I'm leftist, but I support the First Amendment and even defended Alex Jones. Brian Crosby, same here. It's not exactly arbitrary. They pick the winners because it allows them to funnel cash through specific channels rather than dealing with the open market of competition. Amazing atheist is no good dirty. Yeah. Well, I don't know fully about him. I'm saying getting him suspended on that point is nonsense. It really is. He should have made an apology to the New York Times writer. He shouldn't have to make an apology to the New York Times writer. He hasn't done anything to her. This tweet was not belligerent in the least. Who was he attacking in this tweet? Nobody. Look at this. Who is he attacking? White people are disease. They are AIDS. They are a pox upon the earth, and every stinking cracker, one of them, should die of every disease at once. Who is he going to apologize to? Every white person on the planet? Is that who he's going to apologize to? Because that's who he's attacking here. And he's not even doing it real way. Every white person on the planet should get every disease known to man at once. Are you serious? How about a lucrative job offer at your paper? I think I've demonstrated the qualifications. Who is he attacking? He's not even mentioning anybody by name. He shouldn't have to apologize for anything, seeing as he didn't do anything wrong. He's appealing the decision because it's a ludicrous, nonsense decision. So no sarcasm on Twitter now. How dry of a site it's going to be. No sarcasm. No sarcasm. Shh. You can't be funny or sarcastic on Twitter. Otherwise, you risk permanently having your account shut down forever. Forever. Just find this to be amazing. Find this to be amazing. Digital tyranny, yeah. He's doing a parody of the Asian chick. Yeah, he is. Amused outsider, he is. Even you saw that. You're like, oh, he's doing a parody. Yeah, because it's obvious. It's obvious. YouTube should change his name to Judge and Jury John McIntyre. Well, they literally are judge and jury. So is Facebook. So is all of the other digital sites now. They're no longer just platforms. They are active participants in political discourse and political warfare and propaganda. So, there you go. Welcome to fascism. Cooperation of state and business and private enterprise. At least according to Mussolini, I think he knows what he was talking about when he said what it was. So, I'm calling it what it is. State pushing private enterprise to shut down on free speech. Fucking awesome. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the Patreon. Thanks everyone. Have a good night. Oh, by the way, I've chosen the person, I don't have it on me now. I'm going to see if she's going to allow me to give her name out. But the person who's going to get the t-shirt for this week has been chosen. Once she gives me a heads up on it, yes, I'll air it out. Alright guys, y'all have a good night. Bye bye.